back again to our ongoing lectures on our beloved Shri Vrindavan Dham. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Shunyavade Paschata Deshatarane. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So, the other day we finished our lecture saying we would speak on the holy tirtha of Yavat today. But as I started researching Yavat, I realized the pastimes there are very deep and require a lot of thought and expertise to present them properly. So I'm working on that. But I need some more time, and I want to consult with devotees who are more learned in the subject matters than myself. So I thought today we would discuss a pastime place that's very near to Yavat. And it's actually one of my favorite Leela stans in Vrindavan. And that is the sacred place of Ter Kadamba. Ter Kadamba. I can already see some of you smiling. As with my Parikrama party, we've been there many times. So we can begin to understand or uncover the glories of this sacred tirtha just by its name. In Sanskrit, ter, T-E-R, means to call. And Kadamba, of course, refers to the Kadamba tree. And later we'll hear how Krishna liked to climb a Kadamba tree at Ter Kadamba to call his various devotees by their names with his flute. But for now, the English name for the Kadamba tree is the burr flower tree. And it's often described as an evergreen tropical tree native to South and Southeast Asia. And during Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan 5,000 years ago, there was actually a large forest of Kadamba trees at Ter Kadamba. And like the peacocks that we discussed the other day, Kadamba trees and their flowers also play an integral part in Krishna's Vrindavan Leela. For example, the yellow cloth covering Krishna's waist is often compared to the saffron dust of the pollen of the flowers of the Kadamba tree. And the honey that flows from the hollows of the Kadamba tree, when thinned with water and appropriately spiced, make an intoxicating beverage, it's described, that Krishna enjoys along with his gopis. Now we all know that Lord Balaram is very attracted to such intoxicating beverages. Of course, this is all transcendental. And amongst them all, the various intoxicating beverages that he likes, the so-called wine made from Kadamba flowers, that's actually his favorite. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami states this. And we read that in Prabhupada's Nectar of Devotion. We read how Balaram is speaking to Krishna. Quote, "My dear Krishna, tell me at once why the whole world is trembling and while the moon has become elongated. And oh, you members of the Yadu dynasty, why are you laughing at me? Please give me back my liquors made of honey from the Kadamba flower." Liquors made of honey from the Kadamba flower. So that's Balaram's favorite. Now, Kadamba trees play a role in many of Krishna's pastimes. For example, we remember that he jumped from a Kadamba tree into the Jamuna to fight with the Kaliya serpent. And he climbed up on the branch of another Kadamba tree with the stolen clothes of the gopis. And Krishna's also known as Kadamba Kanana Rasa Parayana. He's especially fond of rasa dancing within Kadamba forests. And Sri Radha likes to see Krishna standing against a backdrop of Kadamba trees. Or you could say just, she likes to see him in a Kadamba tree forest. And that we know. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, we hear how 500 years ago, Lord Chaitanya was dancing at a Ratha Yatra festival. And during a particular kirtan in front of Lord Jagannath, he expressed that mood of Radha, her desire to see Krishna within a Kadamba forest, in a verse that he sang in front of the Jagannath deities. That very personality who stole my heart during my youth is now again my master. These are the same moonlit nights of the month of Chaitra. The same fragrance of malti flowers is there, and the sweet breezes are blowing from the Kadamba forest. In our intimate relationship, I am also the same lover, yet still my mind is not happy here. I'm eager to go back to that place on the bank of the Reva, under the Vetasi tree. That is my desire. So Radharani likes to see Krishna in the Kadamba forest. So now, pujaris here in India, they know that the spherical-shaped Kadamba flower, the round flower, it's a round flower, is ideal for making garlands. We often hear of the gopis or Sri Radha making Kadamba garlands for Krishna. And sometimes I read that Krishna likes to string such garlands for them out of these very fragrant flowers from the Kadamba tree. I was reading that once while waiting for Radharani down by the Jamuna, Krishna started to make a garland of Kadamba flowers. He was like really focused on it. So much so that when Radharani arrived, Krishna was really intent on finishing this gift. So he just gave her a loving glance and he went back to making the garland. So Kadamba trees, Kadamba flowers. And the Kadamba trees in Vrindavan, of course, are all desire trees. And they actively participate in Krishna's pastimes. When Krishna left the rasa dance, we know that the gopis, they came up to the Kadamba trees, who are, of course, enlightened, fully enlightened, Krishna-conscious devotees. And they said, "Dear Kadamba trees, where can we find Krishna?" And after Krishna left Braja, Yashoda, Mother Yashoda, she addressed the Kadamba trees in madness. "My dear Kadamba trees, where is my son?" And even the Kadamba trees lament when they can't see Krishna. In Nectar of Devotion, chapter 31, Srila Prabhupada writes, quote, "One devotee tried to console a Kadamba tree when the tree was lamenting because Krishna had not touched even its shadow. The devotee said, 'My dear Kadamba tree, do not worry. After defeating the Kaliya snake in the river Jamuna, Krishna will come and satisfy your desire.'" So even the Kadamba trees are lamenting they can't see Krishna. This mood of vipralambha bhav, separation, is very prevalent in Sri Vrindavan Dham. So again, Ter Kadamba is the place where Krishna would climb these Kadamba trees and call out to his devotees. We'll discuss that in detail. But first, let's get our bearings straight. Exactly where is Ter Kadamba? Well, I mentioned it's not far from Yavat, but it's very close to Nandagram and the Goshala of Nanda Maharaj. Now, you may remember last year we mentioned that Nanda Maharaj has a herd of 900,000 cows. So Krishna began herding these cows when he reached the age of 5 years old. That's called Pagunda. On the very day he turned 5, Krishna approached Mother Yashoda and he said, "Maya, I want to herd cows like my father does." Now when Mother Yashoda heard that, her immediate reaction was no. because she's always in anxiety for Krishna's protection. Just the thought of walking, of his walking outside the house where his lotus feet might be pricked with thorns or sharp stones causes her great anxiety. Now all of a sudden he wants to herd cows as a 5-year-old boy. You know how big cows are. But Krishna kept insisting and insisting, and she finally agreed. So on that very day that he began, the very day that he was to begin herding the cows, that's called Gopastami, the word spread quickly throughout Vrindavan. Krishna's going to start, herding the cows in the forest. So everyone was talking. So Mother Yasoda, she's thinking that now it's become a big affair. Big affair. So in her enthusiasm, she decided to dress Krishna up as a prince. With beautiful, colorful silken clothes and a big turban and all types of jewels and feathers. But as she was doing this, Krishna kept saying, Maya, this is not how cowherd boys are supposed to look. So she replied, Lala, everyone's talking. You're going out with the cows today, so it's become a grand celebration, and I must dress you accordingly. So when she finished dressing Krishna, she took him outside, where all the cowherd boys were waiting for him. Now, as soon as the boys saw him, dressed as a prince, they started laughing and laughing and laughing. They'd never seen him like that before. Shubal Shaki said, look at him, look at him. And Raktaka said, he's dressed like a prince. Do princes take care of cows? So their boys are all rolling on the ground, holding their sides and laughing. And the acharyas say, Krishna just stood there red-faced, much to the dismay of Mother Yashoda. So then suddenly all the boys, they let out a big woo, and they charged forward, and they tore off all of Krishna's princely clothes, and they very quickly dressed him up as a simple cowherd boy. That's the mood of Braj. And the only ornaments he had were his peacock feather, a stick for controlling cows, a little bugle for calling cows, and of course, his vamsi. And after the boys had, dressed Krishna as a gopa, they all stood back together in a group, admiring him like that. And looking at their work, they all said in unison, that's our Krishna. That's our Krishna. And by Prabhupada's grace, that's also our Krishna. So actually, Shastra says that the boys would come very early every morning to wake Krishna up. That's how eager they were to see him. But I was thinking, well, okay, they come very early to wake Krishna up, but then who wakes up the cowherd boys? And with a little research, I found out that it's Lord Balaram. He wakes up the cowherd boys every day, every morning. And that's very nicely described in Nayanandana's Prayo Bhakti Asarnava. We quoted that book a few times. He describes how Balaram is the one that wakes everybody up in Braj. Quote, one should see King Brishabhanu's town at dawn, he writes. At that place, Sridham and other Priyasakas awaken to the sound of Balaram's horn. The Upasakas meet with Sridham and Shudam. They all perform their morning duties and then go to Nandeshwara to see Krishna, mad with prema. Sridham, Shudam, Dhamma, Shubala, Bhadrasena, Shtoka Krishna, Mahabala, Kinkini, the cowherd boy Arjuna, Gopat and others. They go to Nanda's house. Then they stand in the yard of Nanda's house, and in great happiness they call out, rise up, Krishna, rise up, Krishna. And then I found a verse in Govinda Lilamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. He says something similar about this part of the morning. Quote, Gobata, Bhadrasena, Shubal, Shtoka Krishna, the cowherd boy Arjuna, Suridam, Ujvala, Dama, Kinkini, and Sudam quickly came from their houses and joyfully gathered in the yard with Balaram. They called out, O Krishna, get up now and go to see your dear cows in the cowshed. Hare Krishna. We're back in the Sakyaras. So, actually Krishna goes to see the cows first, and then he comes home for his breakfast, which is, of course, cooked again by Sri Radha and her friends. So on this particular day, the first day when he's going to take care of the cows, Gopastami, the whole of Vrindavan town came to see him off. And that is something they would do every day from that time on for eternity. It's not that just Krishna leaves, everybody comes to see Krishna off. The gopas, the gopis, the animals, the bees, the birds. Everybody comes to the perimeter there of the town, and they see Krishna off. And actually, Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda, they're escorting Krishna out. And the send-off place is called Nanda Baitaka. Nanda Baitaka. And at that place there's a kund, it's called Yashoda Kund. So every day this is where they go to Nanda Baitaka and that kund, and they see Krishna off. Nanda Yashoda and everyone see Krishna off. And it's nicely described that every day when Mother Yashoda's sending Krishna off, she says to him and his friends, don't go too far into the forest. And don't go down to play at the river Jamuna because, well, maybe Kamsa will send some dangerous demons there. And she would often say, Krishna, be especially careful not to bathe in the Kaliya Daha, that particular portion of the Jamuna River where the Kaliya serpent was. She's always worried about that. So then, as the boys were leaving, Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda, they would turn around and they would start walking away. And after a few meters, Mother Yashoda would turn around and she'd call out to Krishna every day with tears in her eyes, Lala, do you want to eat some butter when you come home? I thought that was so sweet. Krishna's going, she's crying, and her mother loves, she says, Lala, when you come home, do you want to have some butter? So then she, Nanda Maharaj, everyone in Vrindavan, they'd spend the whole day doing what? Yes, they had their different chores, but the main thing they were doing, or they are doing eternally, is feeling intense separation from Krishna and Balaram until they come home in the evening. Now we know that one moment feels like a millennium to them in separation. So you can just imagine by the time Krishna comes home in the late afternoon, the separation is built up to the umpteenth degree. And what is that moment that they see Krishna coming out of the forest covered in dust, and cowherd boys are jumping and singing and can't wait to tell their parents what Krishna did that day. It's such an exciting moment. This is what it means that there's a festival in Vrindavan every day. Every word is a song, every step is a dance, and there's a festival every day. This is the festival when Krishna comes home in the evening. So, but we're talking about going here, going out into the forest. We'll talk about coming back later. So, one time, actually Mother Yashoda tried to follow Krishna and Balaram and the boys and the cows to the pasturing grounds in the forest. She started following them. It's described she's a heavy-set woman, and very beautiful. And as she's running behind her, the flowers are falling from her hair, and she's perspiring, and she's trying to keep up. So, Balaram, he looks back and he sees, Mother Yashoda running after them. So he quickly goes up to her and he says, Maya, you can't come to the forest. This is not the place for you. You'll spoil our sports. You'll be too worried about us as we're leapfrogging and, running and jumping and wrestling. But she kept insisting. And the Acharyas say, finally Balaram had to put his foot down. No, you are not coming, Mother Yashoda. This Leela and the place of our Leelas is just for the boys. And that's true. The different rasas, the different mellows of Krishna consciousness take place in selected parts of Vrindavan. They're not mixed. The rasas don't mix. The rasas don't mix, and therefore the places of the rasas don't mix. If they mix, it's called rasa basa, and that's to be avoided. So Mother Yashoda went back. So just try to imagine, hundreds, maybe thousands of cowherd boys all dressed up and with their lunch bags, they're throwing their lunch bags back and forth and they're teasing each other and all eyes are on Krishna and the cows, their tails are up in happiness and jumping and leap. This whole huge caravan of Krishna and his friends are making their way towards the pasturing grounds. And I came across this amazing commentary by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, wherein he says that as Krishna, Balaram, and the cowherd boys and all the cows made their way to the forest, all the trees and creepers in the forest waited for them in great anticipation. Krishna and Balaram are coming. Krishna and Balaram are coming. The only way I could relate to that was remembering when Srila Prabhupada would visit our temples in the early 70s. I remember in Detroit and Paris and Geneva and Rome, Prabhupada is coming, Prabhupada is coming, Prabhupada is coming. I can relate to that. The trees and the creepers, the cowherd boys, Krishna cowherd, haven't arrived yet, but they can see the dust clouds, maybe the peacock feather of Krishna, hear the horns. So the trees and the creepers are waiting in great anticipation. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives an analogy, because analogies help us to see things more clearly. And in that, his analogy is that just as when householder Vaishnavas hear a Sankirtan party approaching, they become ecstatic and come outside and offer obeisances. And they hear the sounds. Hariharaya Nama, Krishna Yadavaya Nama, Yadavaya Madhavaya, Kesavaya Nama. To hear, you hear the kirtan? Then they get all the great anticipation. They come outside and offer obeisances. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So when the trees and the creepers and the forest heard and saw in the distance, they became ecstatic. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says they bowed down with their branches and their vines and placed fruit all along the path where Krishna would come. Wow, Shri Vrindavan Dham. Let's go home. What are we doing here in this mad, mad world? So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur remarks that those trees and vines also included the sacred Tulsi plant. And he makes a side note that although exalted in many ways, Tulsi Devi is not normally considered an especially fragrant plant, because she also has her buds and her little flowers. But he says she's not normally considered an especially fragrant plant. However, he writes, and here I will quote him, "Early in the morning, Tulsi emanates a transcendental fragrance that ordinary people cannot perceive, but that transcendental personalities fully appreciate. The bees who are privileged to swarm about the flower garlands worn by the Supreme Personality of Godhead certainly appreciate this fragrance. And the most fragrant plants in Vaikuntha also appreciate the special qualifications of Tulsi Devi. Oh. Early in the morning, Tulsi emits a transcendental fragrance that ordinary people cannot perceive, but that transcendental personalities fully appreciate. Why? Because their spiritual senses are fully awoken. Oh, for that day. And that Tulsi Devi is considered, what was that last thing that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur said? He said, the most fragrant plants in Vaikuntha also appreciate the special qualifications of Tulsi Devi. So Bhagavatam confirms that amongst all the plants, she's special. There's a very important verse glorifying Tulsi Devi in the Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 15th chapter, text number 19. There's a lot of Sanskrit there, so I won't recite that, but this verse is so dear to those who, all of us who worship the Tulsi plant. Quote, although flowering plants like the Mandara, Kunda, Kurabhaka, Utpala, Champaka, Arna, Punnaga, Naga Kishara, Bakula, Lily, and Parijata are full of transcendental fragrance. They are still conscious of the austerities performed by Tulsi, for Tulsi is given special preference by the Lord, who garlands himself with Tulsi leaves. Srimati Tulsi Devi ki. So she's also in the forest waiting for Krishna and the cowherd voice to come. So, now it's interesting that when Krishna finally arrives and he's received there by all the residents of the forest, the trees and the bees and the deers and the rabbits and everybody, it's interesting that when Krishna's in the forest, Mother Yasoda, out of anxiety, she's always worried, motherly love, she sends certain gopis to go out and check up on him, just to make sure he's okay. Of course, they keep their distance, but they're kind of spying. And after observing the Lord, they would come back to report to Mother Yasoda. They come back and report to her. And she just stands at the perimeter there of Vrindavan, anxiously waiting for them. And when these gopi spies come back, she asks them, did you see my son? Did you see my son? And all the gopis would say, yes, he's playing on the bank of the Jamuna. And then she would say, what is he doing? What is he doing? So what is he doing? I was also, what would the gopis say? But there is a verse where the gopis say to Mother Yasoda what Krishna's doing out there in the forest, those gopi spies. There's a verse in Srimad Bhagavatam. Everything's there in Bhagavatam. 10th canto, chapter 35, verses 14 and 15. The gopis tell Mother Yasoda what they saw, and through their eyes what we can see. O pious Mother Yasoda, your son, who is expert in all the arts of herding cows, has now invented many new styles of flute playing. When he takes his flute to his bimba-red lips and sends forth the tones of the harmonic scale in variegated melodies, Brahma, Shiva, Indra, and other chief demigods become confused upon hearing that sound. Although they are the most learned authorities, they cannot ascertain the essence of that music, and thus they bow down their heads and hearts. The report of the gopis to Mother Yasoda. He's very expert at herding the cows, and he's invented new styles of flute playing, and then what's the result of that flute playing, and the devatas, etc. A glimpse into the eternal pastimes of the Lord. So Ter Kadamba, being very close to Nandagram, was one of the favorite places that Krishna would take his friends and his cows. every morning. One of the first places they came across. Cows. There's so many Gomata pastimes. Sometimes people, they question why Krishna or we as his followers place so much emphasis on cows. Well, that alone could be a lecture in and of itself. But here in India, the sadhus say, and I heard the sadhus say this last time I was at Kumbh Mela. There was a group of sadhus that were near me, and I was overhearing their conversations. And I went with another devotee, and we were listening because it's nice to hear. They were glorifying cows. Nice to hear how cows are glorified. So those sadhus, I heard it a few times there at Kumbh Mela, they say that there are 7 things on this earth planet that in this Kali Yuga are keeping this planet from going to hell. That's how one sadhu put it. There are 7 things on this earth planet, he said, that in Kali Yuga are keeping the planet from going to hell. Then he said, despite people's sinful activities. So I listened very closely. I wrote those 7 things down. What are the 7 things that are keeping this planet from going to hell despite people's sinful activities? Cows, Brahmins, the Vedas, chaste ladies, truthful, honest persons, austere people, tyagis, and charitable people. Hare Krishna. And devotees are naturally, Vaishnavas are naturally included in that because, well, we're naturally Brahmanas, we're studying the Vedas, we have so many wonderful chaste ladies in our movement. Our devotees are truthful and honest, we're tyagis, we're austere, and we're charitable. We're distributing the real solution for going back home, back to Godhead and getting out of here, off this earth planet. And what is that? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Mahamantra. So Ter Kadamba was the perfect place for Krishna's cows because the grass there was very lush and green. So when Krishna arrived there for the first time on Gopastami, he didn't forget how the boys had made fun of him when his mother dressed him up as a prince. So he wanted to take a little transcendental revenge. He decided to play a little trick on the boys. Here we are at Ter Kadamba, boys. This is going to be one of our places where our cows graze and we'll have our wrestling and swimming, etc. So now at Ter Kadamba there's a lake. Those of you who have been there, you'll notice, well, recently that lake has been it's beautified, renovated, you could say. That lake is called Shama Talaya. So noticed by the boys, Krishna went and covered Shama Talaya with lots of small green leaves. And they floated on the surface of the water there. So after he'd finished, it all looked like ground. You couldn't tell that it was water. It looked like ground. And on the other side of the lake, some distance away, there were many beautiful flowers growing. So when Krishna came back, he said to his friends, "My dear Gopas, just over there, some distance away, there are many beautiful flowers. Please run there very quickly and bring me back a few flowers." So the cowherd boys are always looking for opportunities to please Krishna. So they all ran at once, like the wind, to pick flowers and, quote, be the first one back to touch Krishna. So they ran and they ran and they ran, and as soon as they got to the lake covered in leaves, they didn't realize, or they couldn't realize it was actually a lake. One by one, they all fell, got completely soaked. And then it was Krishna's turn to laugh. And he did. And he laughed, and he laughed, and he laughed, and he laughed. And all the cowherd boys, their faces turned red. Krishna's laughing. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he writes, "The Lord's laughing lit up all of Vrindavan with his beautiful smile." The Lord's laughing, lit up all of Vrindavan with his beautiful smile. Hare Krishna. Now, there's another pastime that occurs regularly at Ter Kadamba, and that is Radha and Krishna's first meeting of the day. It takes place at Ter Kadamba. And it takes place as Radha and her friends walk by Ter Kadamba in the early morning hours with their milk products, to sell in the nearby markets. So when Krishna first arrives at Ter Kadamba with his cows and his friends in the morning, the first thing he does is he climbs a Kadamba tree and he plays his flute, Ter Kadamba. He calls for all the boys back in Nandagram who are late. So that's the first Ter calling of the day, and there's 3. Then as the cowherd boys play in the early morning sunshine, the gopis intentionally pass very close by Ter Kadamba, just close enough to enable Radha and Krishna to see each other and exchange loving glances. That's their first meeting. So 2 things happen on the early, when Krishna goes to Ter Kadamba in the morning. He goes to the top of a Kadamba tree and he plays his flute, and with the flute he makes the sound of the names of his friends who are late, and they all come running. And then that's where he meets, or he sees Radharani as she passes by. So one summer morning, Krishna was milking a cow, actually, by the side of a very narrow lane at Ter Kadamba, where he knew that Radharani and her girlfriends would pass by. And as the gopis approached, they sensed Krishna was preparing some mischief. And sure enough, just as Radha and her friends passed by, Krishna took the teat from the udder of the cow. He lifted up, and he sprayed milk right into Radharani's face. And the acharyas say that Shri Radha screamed out in surprise, but the other gopis squealed in delight. That's such a sweet pastime. So meanwhile, Krishna continued to spray all the girls with the teat of the cow. They're all drinking, like you see a fireman sometimes with a fire hose, something like that. Shh. So all the girls started running. They started running. And they left Radharani, it's described, unprotected. So Krishna took advantage of the moment and leaping to his feet, while the cow was blocking everyone's vision, he planted a kiss on Radharani's cheek. The acharyas say, quote, "A liberty only the approving parrots in the overhead branches could see." A liberty only the approving parrots in the overhead branches could see, because the cow was blocking the other gopis from seeing Krishna place a kiss on Radharani's cheek, but the parrots saw, and then the news spread. That's their job. So as soon as Lalita understood what was happening, she ran to Shri Radha's rescue, and Krishna ran away in the other direction as his cowherd friends cheered him on. Ter Kadamba ki. So Ter Kadamba, the place of calling. There's 3 calls a day. So we mentioned the first one in the morning, calling the late cowherd boys. So the second time Krishna calls from the top of a Kadamba tree, it's connected with gopis. So when Krishna's at Ter Kadamba, aside from briefly seeing Radharani in the morning, he doesn't see or get to associate with his beloved gopis all day. Just as much as the residents of Vrindavan want to be with Krishna, Krishna wants to be with the residents of Vrindavan. That's our Krishna. Love is reciprocal. So what he does is that every day, well before lunch, he climbs a Kadamba tree and he calls all the gopis that are in the area and at Nandagram. he calls their names. Previously he called the names of the boys, and now with his flute, he's so expert, he calls the names of the gopis with his flute. And with his flute, he says, "Dear girls, please come to Ter Kadamba with your butter, yogurt, and all your milk products. Me and my friends are hungry. Lunch is too far away. Bring us some foodstuffs now." So the acharyas say that within moments, the maddened gopis, they come running with their milk products for Krishna and the cowherd boys. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says, quote, "In this way, the gopis would satisfy the hunger of the Lord. But in fact, the real hunger of the Lord is always his love for his devotees." So having the gopis come on a special request satisfied the Lord's hunger for his gopis association. This is love. This is Ter Kadamba. So the third Ter, the last calling, it comes in the late afternoon actually. All day long, as their cows graze, the gopas would play, they'd wrestle, they'd swim. But as the day wore on, they started thinking of going home. They were all concerned because they knew that Mother Yashoda was waiting for all of them. Waiting for all of them? I thought she was waiting for Krishna and Balaram. No, Mother Yasoda's position is very special. All the gopas, all the cowherd boys, they look to her like mother, like their mother. And she also considers all the cowherd boys to be like her own. So the boys would tell Krishna, "Krishna, it's getting late, we have to go home now." And by this time, you can imagine all the cows have been grazing all day. They're wandering here and there, difficult to collect them all. So what does Krishna do? The third Ter, the third calling, he climbs a Kadamba tree with his flute, and much in the same way that he called the gopas by their names, the cowherd girls by their name, he calls each and every one of the 900,000 cows by their name with his flutes. And Krishna has a long string of counter beads, 900,000. We have 16 plus 4 on the top. His counter bead string, 900,000 beads. And those beads are pearls, emeralds, diamonds, rubies, sapphires. They're not just wooden, they're like that. And each time a cow shows up, he pulls down one of the 900,000. When all the cows are assembled, he comes down off the Kadamba tree. He's called 3 times that day, Ter Kadamba from the tree. And he comes down, and by this time, it's around, it's between 5:30 and 6 p.m. That period is called Goduli, the Goduli period, between 5:30 and 6 p.m. So after this third calling, Krishna, Balaram, and all the cows, the boys, they all start walking back to Nandagram, full of excitement to tell everyone, what were Krishna's exploits that day. And as they approach Nandagram, the boys would announce their arrival. Dun, dun, dun. They have their bugles, they have their horns. They're all coming home. And now Nayanandana, he describes also in his book how they were received. So much detail. How they were received. They're all coming back. This huge group of cows, cowherd boys, Krishna Balaram. So he describes how they're being received, and I quote, "The cowherd men and women in their houses became blissful on hearing the sounds of horns, flutes, and boys' shouts. Leaving their household duties, they run to the road. Nanda, Upananda, and Yashoda also go. Giving up their duties, they all run as fast as they can to again see Krishna and Balaram. All the young and old women leave their houses and remain on the road, desiring to see the two most beautiful transcendental youth of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Unquote. Wow. There's so much excitement on both sides, and then they meet. And then after they've been greeted by Vrindavan's residents, the boys leave for their respective homes. And that's again very nicely described by Nayanandana in his book. Very nicely described. Particularly nice. He writes, "Then each boy takes a path to his own house with his group. Sridham and Sudham embrace Krishna, and Krishna satisfies them with choked words. Holding Subal's hand and speaking sweet words, he bids farewell to him with tears in his eyes. He speaks to Mandali Bhadra and others in a suitable manner, while other boys offer respect to Krishna's lotus feet. Speaking to Krishna and departing, they all herd the cows to their pens. While Krishna and Balaram go to their home in Nandishwara with their group of boys, Sridham, Sudham, and others leave Nandishwara and go to the town of Brishabhanu." So all this is going on every day in the spiritual world. And we're being invited back there by Srila Prabhupada and our previous acharyas. How can we not accept that invitation? Not to accept that invitation means to maintain material desires, even after understanding the glories of the holy names which will deliver us. Let's not maintain any attachments to this world of birth and death. Let's become attached to Krishna's holy name, the instructions of our spiritual master, the service to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and get home quick. So now, as many of you know, 500 years ago, Srila Rupa Goswami selected Ter Kadamba as one of his principal places of bhajan. And in that secluded place, undisturbed by anyone, Rupa Goswami sat beneath a Kadamba tree and wrote books at Ter Kadamba on the science of devotional service. Most significantly, he wrote Upadeshamrita. Upadeshamrita. The British government, when looking into our movement in order to give us authorization, they had some scholars go through all of Prabhupada's books to see who we are. And then they concluded that the one book which could quickly help one appreciate and understand our movement was the Upadeshamrita by Srila Rupa Goswami with Srila Prabhupada's purports. And that Upadeshamrita is where it was written there at Ter Kadamba by Rupa Goswami. It's said that when at Ter Kadamba, when Rupa Goswami wrote of Radharani's deep sorrow at being separated from Krishna, the Kadamba trees would shed their leaves and flowers, just as a person sheds tears of sorrow in times of extreme lamentation. And when Rupa Goswami wrote of Srimati Radharani's happiness at again being united with Krishna, those trees would sprout new leaves and flowers, just as a person's face lights up in times of great happiness. So one time, during Sri Rupa's stay at Ter Kadamba, his elder brother and guru, Sanatana Goswami's appearance day arrived. It was the occasion of his Vyasa Puja, and they stayed separately. Rupa Goswami stayed at Ter Kadamba, and Sanatana Goswami stayed next to Nandagram at a lake called Pavana Sarovara. But they would see each other every day. So it happened to be the Vyasa Puja of Sanatana Goswami. But in his seclusion, Rupa Goswami didn't have any facilities by which he could, honor Sanatana Goswami, give him something, a gift or whatever. And he was at a loss how to celebrate this Vyasa Puja of Sanatana Goswami. It's described that he, As he sat under a Kadamba tree, he simply cried, moistening his manuscripts with his tears. Now, Srimati Radharani, who's ever present in Vrindavan, when she saw Rupa Goswami in this condition, her heart melted to see her devotee in such distress. So she appeared to him. There's a painting, he's writing Upadeshamrita, and you can see a young girl walking down the path with a basket as he's writing Upadeshamrita. It's famous, actually that's on the altar at Ter Kadamba. It's one of the deities, that beautiful painting. So she appeared in the guise, in disguise, as a local girl. And she said, Baba, the elders in our village are worried about you because you live here only on fruits and roots. So they sent me with these things so that you could eat cooked food and stay healthy. There's variations on this pastime. This is what I found to be the most authorized, but she appears with all these, facilities. She said, the elders of our village are worried about you because you live here only on fruits and roots. So they sent me with these things that, so you could eat cooked food, various foodstuffs she's bringing. So overjoyed by this turn of events, Rupa Goswami lost himself. He actually started cooking. Very nice savories, very nice sweets, a very tasty, it's described, kheer, a very tasty sweet rice by his own hands. It's mentioned, without hardly noticing the unusual beauty of his visitor or the hypnotic effect of her sweet voice until she left. He was very appreciative. All this young girl's arrived and ingredients for cooking. I can cook for my brother, for my guru. I can cook. And he wasn't noticing, the unusual beauty. Hardly noticing the unusual beauty of his visitor, her sweet voice, and then so absorbed, and then she left. Where did she go? So soon after, Sanatana Goswami arrived from nearby Pavana Sarovara for his daily, visit with his brother. So Sri Rupa very happily received, and he worshipped, Sanatana Goswami. Then he fed him this very wonderful, freshly cooked feast with its delicious sweet rice. And upon tasting Rupa's cooking, Sri Rupa's cooking, Sanatana Goswami became overwhelmed with spiritual bliss. And then he questioned his brother, how is it in this secluded place, did you get all these ingredients for cooking such a nectarian feast? So Sri Rupa said, or rather, Sanatana Goswami went on, he said, I've only once before tasted food that causes all ecstatic symptoms of love of God to appear in my body at the same time. And that was the milk brought to me by Gopal himself. Tell me, Sanatana said, where did the ingredients for this feast come from? Out here in the middle of this forest. So Sanatana Goswami's question made Sri Rupa Goswami very thoughtful, and he replied, well, a girl from a neighboring village brought them to me. She said the elders, wanted me to, have proper foodstuffs, food items to cook, remain healthy. And so Sanatana Goswami is getting curious here, but this food made me experience 8 ecstatic symptoms. So who gave you the ingredients which caused me to experience this ecstatic love of God? So he continued to question, Sri Rupa. Because Sanatana Goswami, he knew all the residents of Vrindavan. He was a person that he, although he's a very exalted Goswami, he would regularly go see the people and question how they're doing, how's their marriages going, if anyone's sick, do they need some money, do they need some... He was very personal with the people. He knew everybody. So Rupa Goswami is going on describing this young girl came with all these ingredients, and Sanatana Goswami, he concludes, he says, I know of no family who has such a daughter. So looking at Rupa Goswami with tears in his eyes, Sanatana Goswami, he concluded, and I'm quoting here from Shastra, if she wasn't from this village or that village or that village, the girl you spoke to must have been from Varshana. I am concluding she must have been the daughter of King Brishabhanu. Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani. And then Sanatan, he gently reproached his brother Shri Rupa. He said, day and night we're trying to serve Shrimati Radharani and unite her with Krishna, but now you have made her leave him to serve us. This is not good. But although both brothers felt remorse for having been served by Sri Radha, their remorse soon gave way to ecstasy because it was her decision. Their remorse gave way to ecstasy, and embracing each other, they laughed and they wept and they fell down on the ground calling out, "Oh Radha, my queen, oh Radha, my queen." Hare Krishna. Shri Ter Kadamba ki. So many nectarian pastimes there. Again, we have to go. We went, in a sense, by Shabda Brahma, but we have to go. So, it's hard to stop. I would like to finish today with a quote from Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur in another one of his books I was reading the other day. Shri Krishna Bhavan Amrita Mahakavya. Shri Krishna Bhavan Amrita Mahakavya. He writes in the invocation. It's so beautiful. Glorifying Rupa Goswami. Because it's only by the grace of these acharyas we can get even a little glimpse into Sri Vrindavan. And he himself chose Ter Kadamba as his bhajan kutir. So many pastimes there. He had a special affection for that place. So I think it's appropriate today to finish. We begin by our lecture glorifying our beloved spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. We spent a couple of hours glorifying the residents of Vrindavan. It's very nice to close with a verse glorifying Sri Rupa Goswami by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So here it is. Quote, I worship Sri Rupa Goswami and Srila Sanatana Goswami, who brought both Radha and Krishna, the king and queen of Vrindavan, out of their hearts into this world, revealed their pastimes from the Vedic scriptures, and who are followed by all those devotees who love Krishna. Unquote. Whew. Thank you, Prabhu. It's hard to finish, but we'll move on. And not sure I'll do Yavat next. I need some more research, but I promise you I'll find some nectar somewhere in the treasure house of Sri Vrindavan Dham. See you in a few days. Shri Shri Gauranitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani ki, Shri Ter Kadamba ki, Shri Rupa Sanatana Goswami's ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, all the Vaishnavas ki, Go Premanandi, Jai Jai Sisi Radhe, Sham Sham Sham, Krishna's cows ki. Hare Krishna. Thank you.